Paradise Regained, Book 4. Perplexed and troubled at his bad success, the tempter stood, nor had what to reply, discovered in his fraud, thrown from his hope, so oft in the persuasive rhetoric that sleeked his tongue, and won so much on Eve, so little here, nay lost, but Eve was Eve, this far his overmatch, who self-deceived and rash, beforehand had no better weighed the strength he was to cope with, or his own. But as a man who had been matchless, held in cunning, overreached where least he thought, to salve his credit, and for very spite, still will be tempting him who foils him still, and never cease, though to his shame the more, or as a swarm of flies in vintage time, about the winepress where sweet must is poured, beat off, returns as oft with humming sound, or surging waves against a solid rock. Though all to shiver dashed, the assault renew, vain battery, and in froth or bubbles end. So Satan, whom repulse upon repulse met ever, and to shameful silence brought, yet gives not o'er thought, though desperate of success, and his vain importunity pursues. He brought our Saviour to the western side of that high mountain, whence he might behold another plain long, but in breadth not wide, washed by the southern sea, and on the north to equal length backed with a ridge of hills that screened the fruits of the earth and seats of men from cold septentrian blasts, thence in the midst divided by a river, of whose bank on each side an imperial city stood, with towers and temples proudly elevate. On 7 small hills with palaces adorned, porches and theatres, baths, aqueducts, statues and trophies and triumphal arcs, gardens and groves presented to his eyes, above the height of mountains interposed, by what strange parallax or optic skill of vision multiplied through air or glass of telescope, were curious to inquire. And now the tempter thus his silence broke. The city which thou seest no other deem than great and glorious Rome, queen of the earth, so far renowned, and with the spoils enriched of nations, there the capital thou seest, above the rest, lifting his stately head of Tarpeian rock, her citadel impregnable, and there Mount Palatine, the imperial palace, compass huge and high, the structure, skill of noblest architects, with gilded battlements conspicuous far, turrets and terraces and glittering spires, many a fair edifice besides, more like houses of gods, so well I've disposed my airy microscope. Thou mayst behold outside and inside both pillars and roofs, carved work, the hand of famed artificers in cedar, marble, ivory, or gold. Thence to the gates cast round thine eyes, and see what conflux issuing forth or entering in, praetors, proconsuls to their province, hasting on or return, in robes of state, lictors and rods, the ensigns of their power, legions and cohorts, turns of horse and wing, in various or embassies from regions far remote, in various habits on the Appian road, or on to Aemilion, some from far the south, Syene, and where the shadows both way falls, Miro, and the Loctic Isle, and more to west, the realm of Bacchus, to the Blackmoor Sea, from the Asian kings and Parthian among these, from India and the golden Chersonese, and utmost Indian Isle Taprobane, dusk vases with white silken turbants wreathed from Gala, Gades in the British West, Germans and Scythians and Sarmatians north beyond Danubius, the Tauric pool. All nations now Rome obedience pay, to Rome's great emperor, whose wide domain and ample territory, wealth and power, civility of manners, art and arms. In long renown thou justly mayest prefer before the Parthian these 2 thrones, except the rest are barbarous and scarce worth the sight, shared among petty kings too far removed. These having shown, I have shown thee all the kingdoms of the world in all their glory. The emperor hath no son, and now is old and lascivious, and from Rome retired to Capre, an island small but strong, on the Campanian shore, with purpose there his horrid lust in private to enjoy, committing to a wicked favorite all public care, and yet of him suspicious, hated of all, and hating with what ease endued with regal virtues as art thou, appearing and beginning noble deeds, might thou expel this monster from his throne, now made a sty, and in his place ascending, a victor, people free from servile yoke. And with my help thou mayest to me the power is given, and by that right I give it to thee. Aim therefore no less than all the world. Aim at the highest, without the highest attained will be for thee no sitting, or not long, on David's throne, may be prophesied what will, to whom the Son of God unmoved replied, Nor doth this grandeur and majestic show of luxury thou called magnificence more than of arms before allure mine, much less my mind, though there shouldst add to tell their sumptuous gluttonies and gorgeous feasts on citron tables or Atlantic stone. For I have also heard, but perhaps have read, their wines of Cetia, Cales, and Falern, Chios and Crete, and how they quaff in gold, crystal and myrrhine cups and bows with gems and studs of pearl. To me shouldst tell who thirst and hunger still, then embassies thou showest from nations far and nigh, what honour that but tedious waste of time to sit and hear so many hollow compliments and lies, outlandish flatteries? Then proceedest to talk of the emperor, how easily subdued, how gloriously. I shall, thou sayest, expel a British monster. What if I withal expel a devil who first made him such? Let his tormentor conscience find him out. For him I was not sent, nor yet to free that people victor once now vile and base, deservedly made vassal, who once just frugal and mild and temperate conquered well, but governed in the nations under yoke, peeling their provinces, exhausted all by lust and rapine, first ambitious growth, having grown of triumph, that insulting vanity, then cruel by their sport to blood, inured, of fighting beast and men to beast exposed, luxurious by their wealth, and greedier still, and from the daily scene effeminate. What wise and valiant men would seek to free thee thus degenerate by themselves enslaved, or could of inward slaves made outward free? Know therefore, when my season comes to sit on David's throne, it shall be like a tree spreading and overshadowing all the earth, or as a stone that shall to pieces dash all monarchies besides throughout the world, and of my kingdom there shall be no end. Means there shall be to this, but what the means is not for thee to know, nor me to tell. To whom the tempter impudent replied, I see all offers made by me, how slight thou valuest, because offered and rejectest. Nothing will please the difficult and nice, or nothing more than still to contradict. On the other side, know also thou that I on what I offer set as high esteem, nor what I part with mean to give for naught. All these which in a moment thou beholdest, the kingdoms of the world to thee I give, for given to me I give to whom I please. No trifle, yet with this reserve not else. On this condition, if thou wilt fall down and worship me as thy superior lord, easily done, and hold them all of me. For what can less so great a gift deserve? Whom thus our Saviour answered with disdain, I never liked thy talk, thy offers less. Now both abhor, since thou hast dared to utter the abominable terms, impious condition, but I endure the time till which expired thou hast permission on me. It is written, the first of all commandments, thou shalt worship thy Lord thy God, and only him shalt serve. And darest thou to the Son of God propound to worship the accursed, now more accursed for this attempt bolder than that of Eve, and more blasphemous, which expect to rue? The kingdoms of the world to thee were given, permitted rather, and by thee usurped. Other donation none that thou canst produce, if given by whom but by the King of Kings, God over all supreme. If given to thee by thee, how fairly is the giver now repaid? But gratitude in thee is lost. Long since wert thou so void of fear or shame as offer them to me, the Son of God, to me my own on such abhorred pact, that I fall down and worship thee as God? Get thee behind me, plain thou now appearest, that evil one, Satan, forever damned, to whom the fiend with fear abashed replied, Be not so sore offended, Son of God, though Son of God both angels are and men. If I to try whether in higher sort, that these thou bearest that title, I have proposed, what both from men and angels I receive, tetrarchs of fire, air, flood, and of the earth, nations, besides, from all the corridered winds, God of this world invoked and the world beneath, who then thou art, whose coming is foretold to me so fatal, me it most concerns. The trial hath endamaged thee no way, rather more honour left and more esteem, me not advantaged, missing what I aimed. Therefore let pass as they are transitory, the kingdoms of the world. I shall no more advise thee gain them as thou canst or not, and thou thyself seem'st otherwise inclined than to a worldly crown, addicted more to contemplation and profound dispute, as by that early action may be judged, when slipping from thy mother's eye thou wentst alone to the temple, there wast thou among the gravest rabbis, disputant on points and questions fitting Moses' chair, teaching, not taught. The childhood shows the man, as morning shows the day. Be famous then by wisdom, as thy empire must extend, so let extend thy mind over all the world, In knowledge all things it comprehends. All knowledge is not couched in Moses' law, the Pentateuch, or what the prophets wrote. The Gentiles also know and write and teach the admiration led by nature's light. And with the Gentiles much thou must converse, ruling them by persuasion as thou meanest. Without their learning, how wilt thou with them? Or they with thee hold conversation meet? How wilt thou reason with them? How refute their idolisms, traditions, paradoxes? Error by his own arms is best evinced. Look once more ere we leave the specular mount westward, much nearer by southwest. Behold, where on the Aegean shore a city stands, built nobly, pure the air, and light the soul. Athens, the eye of Greece, mother of arts and eloquence, native to famous wits, or hospitable in her sweet recess, city or suburb, studious walks and shades. See there the olive grove of Academe, Plato's retirement, where the Attic bird thrills her thick warbled notes the summer long. Their flowery hill Hymettus, with the sound of bees, industrious murmurs of invites to studious musings, there Ilcius rolls, his whispering stream within the walls. Then view the schools of ancient sages, him who bred great Alexander to subdue the world. Lyceum there, and painted Stoa next. There thou shalt hear and learn the secret power of harmony in tones and numbers hit by voice or hand in various measured verse. Aeolian charms and Dorian lyric odes, and his who gave them breath but higher sung, blind Melesagenes, thence Homer called, whose poem Phoebus challenged for his own. Thence what the lofty grave tragedians taught, in chorus or iambic, teachers best, of moral prudence with delight received, in brief sentences precepts, while they treat of fate and chance and change in human life. High actions and high passions best describing, thence the famous orators repair, those ancient whose resistless eloquence wielded at will with the that fierce democracy shook the arsenal and fulmined over Greece, to Macedon and Artaxerxes' throne. To sage philosophy next lend thine ear, from heaven descended to the low roofed house of Socrates. See there his tenement, whom well inspired the oracle pronounced, wisest of men, from whose mouth issued forth mellifluous streams that watered all the schools of academics, old and new, with those named Peripatetics and sects, Epicureans and the Stoics severe. These here revolve, or as thou likest at home, till time mature thee to a kingdom's weight. These rules will render thee a king, complete within thyself, much more with empire joined. To whom our Saviour sagely thus replied, think not but that I know these things, or think I know them not. Not therefore am I short of knowing what I ought. He who receives light from above, from the fountain of light, no other doctrine needs, though granted true. For these are false, or little else but dreams, conjectures, fancies, built on nothing firm. The first and wisest of them all professed to know this only, that he nothing knew. The next to fabling fell on smooth conceits. A third sort doubted all things, though plain sense. Others in virtue placed felicity. But virtue joined with riches and long life and corporeal pleasure, he in careless ease, a stoic, last in philosophic pride, by him called virtue, and his virtuous man wise, perfect in himself, and all possessing, equal to God, oft shames not to prefer, as fearing God nor man, contemning all, wealth, pleasure, pain, or torment, death, and life, which when he lists, he leaves, or boast he can, for all his tedious talk is but a vain boast, or subtle shifts conviction to evade. Alas, what can they teach and not mislead, ignorant of themselves, of God much more, and how the world began, and how man fell, degraded by himself, on grace depending. Much of the soul they talk, but all awry, and in themselves seek virtue, and to themselves all glory arrogate, to God give none. Rather accuse him under usual names, fortune and fate, as one regardless quite of mortal things, who therefore seeks in these true wisdom, find or not. Or by delusion, far worse, her false resemblance only meets an empty cloud. However many books wise men have said are wearisome, who reads incessantly, and whose reading brings not a spirit and judgment equal or superior, and what he brings, what needs he elsewhere seek, uncertain and unsettled still remains, deep versed in books, and shallow in himself, crude or intoxicate, collecting toys and trifles for choice matters, worth a sponge, as children gathering pebbles on the shore. Or if I would delight my private hours with music or with poem, where so soon as in our native language can I find that solace? All our law and story strewed, with hymns our psalm, with artful terms inscribed, our Hebrew songs and harps in Babylon that please so well our victors, ere declare that rather Greece from us these arts derived, ill imitated while they loudest sing the vices of their deities, and their own in fable, hymn, or song so personating, their gods ridiculous and themselves past shame, remove their swelling epithets thick laid as varnish on the harlot's cheek, the rest, then thin sown with aught of profit or delight, will far be found unworthy to compare with Sion's songs to all true taste excelling, where God is praised aright and godlike men, the holiest of holies and his saints. Such are from God inspired, not such from thee, unless where moral virtue is expressed by light of nature, not all quite lost. Their orators, though, then extol us as though the top of eloquence, statist indeed, and lovers of their country as may seem, but herein to our prophets far beneath, as men divinely taught in better teaching, solid rules of civil government, in their majestic unaffected style, than all the oratory of Greece and Rome. In them is plainest taught and easiest learnt what it makes a nation happy, and keeps it so, what ruins kingdoms and lays cities flat. These only with our law best form a king, so spake the Son of God. But Satan now, quite at a loss, for all his darts were spent, thus to our Saviour with stern brow replied, Since neither wealth nor honour, arms nor arts, kingdom nor empire pleases thee, nor aught by me proposed in life contemplative or active, tended on by glory or fame, what dost thou in this world a wilderness? For thee is the fittest place. I found thee here, and thither will return thee. Yet remember what I foretold thee. Soon thou shalt have cause to wish thou never hadst rejected thus nicely or cautiously my offered aid, which would have set thee in short time with ease on David's throne, or throne of all the world. Now at full age, fullness of time, thy season, when prophecies of thee are best fulfilled. Now contrary, if I read aught in heaven, or heaven and write aught of fate, by what the stars of luminous or single characters in their conjunction met give me the spell sorrows and labors, opposition, hate attends thee, scorns, reproaches, injuries, violence, and stripes, and lastly cruel death. A kingdom they portend thee, but what kingdom, real or allegoric, I discern not, nor when eternal sure as without end, without beginning, for no date prefixed, directs me in the starry rubric set. So saying he took, for still he knew his power not yet expired, and to the wilderness brought back the Son of God, and left him there. Feigning to disappear, darkness now rose, as daylight sunk and brought in the lowering night, her shadowy offspring unsubstantial both, privation mere of light and absent day. Our Saviour, meek and with untroubled mind, after his airy jaunt, hurried sore, hungry and cold, betook him to his rest, wherever under some concourses of shade, whose branching arms thick intertwined might shield from dews and damps of night his sheltered head. But sheltered slept in vain, for as his head the tempter watched, and soon with ugly dreams disturbed his sleep, and either tropic now gain thunder, and both ends of heaven the clouds from many a horrid rift abortive poured fierce rain with lightning mixed, water with fire, and ruin reconciled, nor slept the winds within their stormy caves, but rushed abroad from the four hinges of the world, and fell on the next wilderness, whose tallest pines, though rooted deep as high, and sturdiest oaks bowed their stiff necks, loaded with stormy blasts, or torn up sheer. Ill wast thou shrouded then, O patient Son of God, yet only stoodst unshaken, nor yet stayed the terror there. Infernal ghosts and hellish furies round environed thee. Some howled, some yelled, some shrieked, some bent at their fiery darts, whilst thou sattest unappealed in calm and sinless peace. Thus passed the night so foul till morning fair came forth the pilgrim steps in amice gray, who with her radiant finger stilled the roar of thunder, chased the clouds, and laid the winds, and grisly spectres which the fiend had raised to tempt the Son of God with terrors dire. And now the sun with more effectual beams had cheered the face of the earth, and dried the wet from drooping plants or dropping trees. The birds, who all things now behold more fresh and green after a night of storm so ruinous, cleared up their choicest notes in bush and spray to gratulate the sweet return of morn. Nor yet amidst this joy and brightest morn was absent after all this his mischief done. The Prince of Darkness was glad would also seem of this fair change, into our Saviour came. Yet with no new device they all were spent, rather by this last affront resolved, desperate of better course to vent his rage. And mad despite to be so oft repelled, him walking on a sunny hill he found, backed on the north and west by a thick wood. Out of the woods he starts in the wonted shape, and in a careless mood thus to him said, Fair morning yet betides thee, son of God. After dismal night I heard the rack as earth and sky would mingle, but myself was distant, and these flaws, uh, though mortals fear them as dangerous to the pillared frame of heaven or to the earth's dark basis underneath, are to the main as inconsiderable and harmless, if not wholesome, as a sneeze. To man's less universe and sooner gone. Yet as being oft times noxious where they light on man, beast, plant, wasteful and turbulent, like turbulences in the affairs of men, over whose heads as they roar and seem to point, they oft for signify and threaten ill. This tempest at this desert most was bent of men at thee, for only thou here dwellest. Did I not tell thee, if thou didst reject the perfect season offered with my aid to win thy destined thy destined seat, but wilt prolong all to the push of fate, pursue thy way of gaining David's throne no man knows when? For both the when and how is nowhere told. Thou shalt be what thou art ordained, no doubt, for angels have proclaimed it, but concealing the time and means, each act is rightliest done, not when it must, but when it may be best. If thou observe not this, be sure to find what I foretold thee, many a hard essays of dangers and adversities and pains, ere thou of Israel's sceptre get fast a hold. Whereof this ominous night that closed thee round, so many terrors, voices, prodigies, may warn thee that as sure foregoing sign. So talked he, while the Son of God went on and stayed not, but in brief him answered thus, Me worse than wet thou findest not. Other harm, those terrors which thou speakest of, did me none. I never feared they could, though noising loud and threatening nigh. What they can do as signs betokening or ill boding I contemn, as false portents not sent from God but thee, who knowing I shall reign past thy preventing, obstrudest thy offered aid, that I accepting at least might seem to hold all power of thee. Ambitious spirit, and wouldst be thought my God, and stormest refuse, thinking to terrify me to thy will, desist, thou art discerned, and toil is in vain, nor me in vain molest. To whom the fiend now swollen with rage replied, Then hear, O son of David, virgin born, for son of God to me is yet in doubt. Of the Messiah I have heard foretold by all the prophets of thy birth at length announced by Gabriel with the first I knew, and of the angelic song in Bethlehem field on thy birth night that sung the Saviour born. From that time seldom have I ceased to eye thy infancy, thy childhood, and thy youth, thy manhood last, though yet in private bred, till at the ford of Jordan, whither all flocked to the Baptist, I among the rest, though not to be baptized, by voice from heaven, heard thee pronounced the Son of God beloved. Thenceforth I thought thee the worth my nearer view and narrower scrutiny, that I might learn in what degree or meaning thou art called the Son of God, which bears no single sense. The Son of God I also am, or was, and if I was, I am in relation stands. All men are sons of God, yet thee I thought in some respect far higher, so declared. Therefore I watched thy footsteps from that hour, and followed thee still on this wasteful wild, where by all best conjecture I collect thou art to be my fatal enemy. Good reason then, if I beforehand seek to understand my adversary, who and what he is, his wisdom, power, intent, by parlor, composition, truce, or league, to win him or win from him what I can, and an opportunity I here have had to try thee, sift thee, and confess have found thee proof against all temptation, as a rock of adamant and as a center firm, to the utmost of mere man, both wise and good. Not more for honors, riches, kingdom, glory have been before contemned, and may again. Therefore, to know what more thou art than man, worth naming Son of God by voice from heaven, another method I must now begin. So saying, he caught him up, and without wing of hippogriff bore through the air sublime over the wilderness and over the plain, till underneath them fair Jerusalem, the holy city, lifted high her towers, and higher yet the glorious temple reared her pile, far off appearing like a mount of alabaster topped with golden spires. There on the highest pinnacle he set the Son of God, and added thus in scorn, There stand, if thou wilt stand, to stand upright. We'll ask thee skill. I to thy father's house have brought thee, in highest place, highest is best. Now show thy progeny, if not to stand, cast thyself down safely, if Son of God, for it is written, He will give command concerning thee to his angels in their hands, that they shall uplift thee, lest at any time thou chance to dash thy foot against a stone. To whom thus Jesus also is written, Tempt not the Lord thy God, he said and stood. But Satan, smitten with amazement, fell, as when earth's son Antaeus, to compare small things with greatest. In a race strove with Jove's Alcides, and oft foiled still rose, receiving from his mother earth new strength, fresh from his fall and fiercer grappled, joined, throttled at length in the air, expired and fell. So after many a foil, the tempter proud, renewing fresh assaults amidst his pride, fell whence he stood to see his victor fall. And as that thieving monster that proposed her riddle, and him who solved it not devoured, that once found out and solved for grief and spite, cast herself headlong from the Isthmian steep. So struck with dread and anguish fell the fiend, and to his crew that sat consulting brought joyless triumphals of his hoped success, ruin and desperation and dismay, who durst so proudly tempted the Son of God. So Satan fell, and straight a fiery globe of angels on full sail of wings flew nigh, who on their plumy vans received him soft from his uneasy station, upbore as on a floating couch through the blithe air. Then in a flowery valley set him down on a green bank, and set before him spread a table of celestial food. Divine ambrosial fruits fetched from the tree of life, and from the fount of ambrosial drink that soon refreshed him, wearied and repaired what hunger, if aught hunger had impaired or thirst, and as he fed, angelic choirs sung heavenly anthems of his victory over temptation and the tempter proud. True image of the Father, whether throned in the bosom of bliss and light of heaven, conceiving, or remote from heaven, enshrined in fleshy tabernacle and human form, wandering the wilderness, whatever place, habit, or state, or motion, still expressing the Son of God with godlike force, endued against the attempter of thy Father's throne. In deep of paradise, him long of old thou didst rebel, and down from heaven cast with all his army. Now thou hast avenged supplanted Adam, and by vanquishing temptation hast regained lost paradise, and frustrated the conquest fraudulent. He never more henceforth will dare set foot in paradise to tempt, his snares are broke, for through that seat of earthly bliss he failed. A fairer paradise is founded now. For Adam and his chosen sons, whom thou, a Savior, art come down to reinstall, where they shall dwell secure when time shall be of tempter and temptation without fear. But thou, infernal serpent, shalt not long rule in the clouds like an autumnal star or lightning. Thou shalt fall from heaven trod down under his feet for proof ere this thou feelest thy wound, yet not thy last and deadliest wound. By this repulse received and holdest in hell no triumph, and all our gates abaddon ruse. Thy bold attempt hereafter learn with awe to dread the Son of God. He, all unarmed, shall chase thee with the terror of his voice from thy demoniac holds, possession foul. Thee and thy legions, yelling, they shall fly and beg to hide them in a herd of swine, lest he command them down into the deep, bound into torment, sent before their time. Hail, Son of the Most High, heir of both worlds, queller of Satan, on thy glorious work now enter and begin to save mankind. Thus they, the Son of God, our Savior meek, sung victor, and from heavenly feast refreshed, brought on his way with joy, he unobserved, home to his mother's house, private returned. The end.